Welcome to The Explainer. Let's just jump right in because today we are unpacking a truly fascinating, completely paradigm-shifting piece of philosophical writing titled Those in Pain Cannot Enter Heaven by Su Feng. We're going to explore a radical framework that totally upends how we typically view human suffering. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the world or frustrated that solving one problem just seems to instantly spawn another, the concepts we're about to look at might genuinely change your perspective. We'll be going through the source material step by step to clearly map out this incredibly bold philosophy. To kick things off, I want to pose this question directly to you. Why does it feel like our suffering never truly ends? It's a deeply relatable question, isn't it? I mean, we all experience pain. We've all had those stretches where it feels like we're just putting out fires, only to turn around and find another one raging right behind us. This universal, exhausting experience of endless struggle is exactly where our source text begins. It starts by validating that yes, life is absolutely filled with hardships. But then, it asks us to completely reconsider where those hardships are actually coming from.
Section 1. The endless sources of pain, the unfathomable depths of external suffering.
Now, before asking us to change our mindset, the text actually takes a moment to thoroughly acknowledge the sheer, overwhelming weight of the worldly grievances we all face every single day. The author does not shy away from the realities of human struggle. The text outlines pains ranging from the incredibly mundane and modern, the constant stress of unpaid car or home loans, or the pain of confinement and lack of food during lockdowns, to deeply personal betrayals by friends or the trauma of being bullied. And it scales all the way up to existential dread, power struggles, natural disasters, and the fundamental human sufferings of birth, aging, illness, and death. It even factors in the pain of failing to achieve societal success, like not becoming rich or famous, along with the quiet agony of unfulfilled desires. The text groups all of these together to illustrate one huge point. The external world provides an endless, totally unfathomable supply of reasons to be miserable. And that leads us to a pivotal realization from the text. I'll quote it directly. The source of pain is endless and unfathomable. If we respond to pain with more pain, the suffering will be endless. This is absolutely crucial to the foundation of this explainer. The author is asserting that if we constantly try to fix external problems by reacting to them directly, if we just fight the world on its own terms, we are quite literally trapping ourselves. Reacting to that endless external list we just went through, it guarantees that we are going to remain stuck in a never-ending cycle of misery.
Section 2. Pain as a conscious illness, the radical reframe of suffering.
So, if reacting to external pain doesn't work, what actually does? Well, if external fixes constantly fail us, this philosophy demands we stop looking outward and start looking in a completely different direction, inward. The author introduces this concept of conscious illness. The incredibly bold claim here is that pain is not actually inflicted upon us by the outside world at all. Instead, it's a sickness of the mind itself. According to this framework, whenever you feel pain, it isn't proof that the world is unfair. Rather, it's a giant red flashing indicator that you personally have gone astray. Any experience of pain is essentially just a symptom of a sick consciousness. And the text issues a really stark warning on this point. Believing pain comes from the outside guarantees it will be never-ending. The author argues that if we believe our suffering is caused by external factors, whether that's other people, nature, the economy, just bad luck, we are doomed. No matter how hard we try or how much we cry out to the heavens, as the text implies, if we blame the outside world, the pain is always going to accompany us. It is an exercise in utter futility.
Section 3. The Heaven and Hell Paradox. Testing the theory of consciousness.
To prove this rather extreme point, the text uses this mind-bending thought experiment to demonstrate that your physical environment and your circumstances do not actually dictate your internal state of happiness. Imagine being placed directly into heaven, like a literal paradise. If you bring a sick consciousness with you, you will still experience endless pain. You'll find something to be miserable about, even in paradise. Conversely, the text argues that if your consciousness is perfect and healthy, you could be placed in what we call hell, and you would feel absolutely zero pain. The implication here is staggering. If you feel like life is unbearable right now, it's not because your life is actually terrible. It simply means your consciousness is currently residing in its own personal hell.
To make this super concrete, the author offers a highly provocative hypothetical scenario, which I'll actually pose directly to you right now. If you fell in love with someone and were in a committed relationship with them, but then you found out your partner slept with someone else, how would you feel? Would it be painful? For almost everyone, the immediate, visceral answer is yes, absolutely. It would be incredibly painful.
But here is the author's controversial punchline to that exact scenario. The problem is in your own consciousness. The text argues that if you feel pain in that situation of infidelity, it is your own hell consciousness manufacturing that suffering. The author suggests that a jealous, possessive mindset is literally a sickness. Even if a person with that specific consciousness were transported to heaven, they'd still manage to create pain for themselves, because the root of the suffering isn't actually the partner's action. It's the possessive attachment deeply embedded within the mind itself.
Section 4. 3 types of suffering, categorizing the anatomy of pain. As we continue to decode this philosophy, the author breaks down this conscious illness into 3 distinct categories to show exactly how we experience these internal sicknesses in our daily lives. First up, we have physical pain, which is straightforward bodily suffering. Second, we have mental pain, which the text defines primarily as emotional pain and distress, like the heartbreak from that infidelity scenario we just talked about. Finally, there's spiritual pain, which is a much deeper suffering caused by clashes in your worldview, your values, and your overall outlook on life itself. And by defining these 3 specific areas, the author builds up to a very surprising realization. For the vast majority of people, mental pain, that emotional distress, completely dominates the other 2 categories. While physical and spiritual pains certainly exist, it's our emotional turbulence, our mental reactions to the world, that make up the overwhelming bulk of the suffering we endure. Which brings us right back to the mind, to our consciousness, as the primary battleground. Section 5. The root cause. Ego. The danger of attachment to the self. Okay, so if our mental consciousness is sick, and that sickness is causing our pain, what actually causes the sickness in the first place? The text traces all of this complex suffering back to one single potent origin point. Erroneous consciousness comes from attachment to the self. Specifically, the author defines this as the stubborn, constant belief that you are always right and others are wrong. It's the ego. Clinging to your own rightness and fixating on the wrongness of others is exactly what infects the consciousness. It is this absolute refusal to self-reflect that ultimately traps us in misery. The text uses a very striking, heavy phrase to describe someone who gets stuck in this state, obstinate and unenlightened. According to this philosophy, if you constantly attribute your pain to external factors, if you skip over self-reflection and instead spend all your energy blaming and condemning other people or the world around you, you are being obstinate and unenlightened. You're actively keeping yourself sick by refusing to look at your own ego. And the text reaches a rather grim conclusion for those who refuse to change. Refusing the medicine being self-reflection and letting go of the ego, makes the illness terminal. The author states that if we fail to recognize that our pain comes from our own erroneous consciousness, our lives will simply be surrounded by pain forever. The text even goes so far as to say that without this realization, regardless of countless cycles of reincarnation over thousands of years, a person will continue to live in pain and will never, ever be able to enter heaven. Which brings us to a really powerful question to leave you with today. Are you willing to take the medicine, or is your consciousness keeping you in hell? It's a provocative challenge, directly inspired by our source material. And look, whether you fully agree with this radical philosophy or not, it undeniably forces us to completely reevaluate how we process our daily frustrations. The next time you feel overwhelmed by the endless, unfathomable pains of the world, this text challenges you to stop, look inward, and honestly ask yourself if your own ego is the true source of your suffering. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this sparks some deep reflection on your own journey.